Once upon a time, people forgave Lamborghinis for being frankly not very good, because they were absolutely and certifiably bonkers. Those days are now gone, because buyers spending so much money on a car demand much more than just brash looks and insane speed. The modern Lambo is now a more grown-up, more well-rounded offering, and the Huracan, which faces off against cars like the Ferrari 458 Italia and the McLaren 650S, is proof.
Lamborghini may have toned things down a bit, but the modern Lambo, the Huracan included, is certainly no shrinking violet. The front end is all sharp edges and angular details, and instantly that gives a look of menace and aggression. At the sides, the brashness is provided by these jagged air intakes, top and bottom, but for us, it's at the back end where the Huracan really shows its true colours. These massive outboard mounted quad exhausts dominate proceedings, but the spangly light clusters and the compact rear haunches also add to the drama, of which, it's safe to say, there's plenty. The cabin isn't short on drama either. Check out this little cover for the start button, which looks like the missile launcher on a jet fighter. Now how's that for shock and awe? And perhaps most surprisingly for a Lamborghini, it's actually quite comfortable in here. The space you get is pretty generous, and there is loads of adjustment for your driving position. True, the cabin isn't completely free of classic Lambo weirdness. The indicators are operated by this slider switch on the steering wheel, and it is impossible to cancel a signal without signalling the other way, and it drives you mad. This TFT monitor behind the steering wheel is also pretty cluttered because it contains all your infotainment menus as well as your usual driving instruments. You get hardly any kit as standard either. Sat-nav, Bluetooth, even an alarm cost extra. So do rear parking sensors, and with the view out of the back of this thing, you are going to need those. And while the interior feels reasonably exotic, there are just one or two places where the quality of the materials is just a wee bit disappointing. To be fair though, that is a criticism you could level at most supercars, and the same goes for the minuscule space you get for your luggage. However, the most important thing about any supercar is the way it drives, and the Huracan won't disappoint. Performance is provided by a naturally aspirated 5.2 litre V10 with 602 brake horsepower. Vital statistics: 0 to 62 in 3.2 seconds and a top speed of 202 miles per hour. But it's the way that the power's delivered that really gets you. Because there's no turbocharger, you get no peaks and troughs in the power delivery, so the acceleration is just relentless. And if you select one of the sportier settings on this rocker switch down here, the exhaust gets a whole lot louder, and it sounds just awesome. The thing that really sets the Huracan apart from its rivals is the fact that it's four-wheel drive rather than rear-wheel drive, and that gives you immense grip and traction when you're tackling a set of bends. And even a relatively inexperienced driver can get this thing across country pretty darn quickly and feel like an absolute hero in the process. But if we're honest, with a more experienced driver, the Huracan lacks a little something compared with its rivals from Ferrari and McLaren. It just doesn't quite feel as deft or as graceful or as responsive as those cars, and the steering just doesn't give you the same feeling of connection with the road. That said, the Huracan is the most refined Lamborghini we have driven in some years, thanks in no small part to this smooth twin-clutch gearbox. This particular car also has the optional adaptive suspension, and in its least hardcore setting, the ride isn't all that raw. However, it's still not as refined or as comfortable as a McLaren 650S.
Overall, the Huracan isn't the most polished supercar of its type, but it's the closest Lamborghini has come to troubling the class leaders for many, many years. Importantly, it's still a Lambo. Outrageous looking, outrageously fast, and outrageously noisy. Also, it's a more left field choice than a Ferrari or a McLaren, and that in itself will be extremely appealing to many supercar buyers.